Hello, everybody. My name is Ralph Danisco. I'm the project manager for the consultant team at Stantec on behalf of the town of Arlington, working on the Mass Ave Appleton Street Safety and Accessibility Corridor project. Hopefully, you're able to join us at our public meeting on March 15th. If not, I'm recording this presentation, which is the same exact one that was presented at that meeting. And thank you for watching and listening to it. The agenda that we went over and that I'll go over here again to give just a general overview of the project, give an update on the funding and schedule and some of the urgency that's around that, a reminder of what we heard at previous meetings, and then really to reveal the concept that we're at 25% design, that we're wanting to get feedback from the community on. And this is also what was presented at the meeting, and we had it laid out on large tables for folks to pay attention to and mark up. So we're going to invite you to do the same thing online. In terms of the project overview, hopefully many of you were involved a few years ago when the town, following the tragic incident, went through a process and developed some short-term interim improvements at the intersection of Mass Ave and Appleton. I think to some acclaim that these things were done and done quickly and improved safety, but I think also with the recognition that there was much more to be done in terms of a more permanent solution, not just the Mass Ave Appleton Street intersection, but to the larger area. And with that, one of our challenges was really to take a much broader view of the Mass Ave corridor, going a few more blocks in either direction and understanding how it looks, feels, operates for all the different users that interact with Mass Ave. And one thing that you see, we've certainly observed and we've heard from many people, is this section of Mass Ave, really between Forest and Appleton, is disjointed. It happens, that it's kind of between two curves of Mass Ave, and as you're approaching it from either direction to the east or the west, the street's fairly wide and open. So vehicles are speeding through there. Everybody kind of is, and you don't realize you're entering a new and different environment until you pass those curves, and then all of a sudden you're met with the challenge of all of the different facilities that have been implemented and trying to figure out who's supposed to be where and how that goes. So a big part of what we're doing, kind of extending that kind of treatment out further on Mass Ave. Some of the additional challenges that certainly came up in the meetings and were backed up with data. There's very few pedestrian crossings along this stretch of Mass Ave, despite the fact that there's a lot of desire to go from one end to the other. The short-term interim design, as I said, addressed many concerns, but not all of the neighborhood concerns. I think there's been a strong desire to do more for all of the various users. And then those poor sight lines, and again, I'm going left to right here, lead to accidents or crashes or perceived or safety issues or some of the challenges here. So these are all things I think we're trying to correct through the more permanent design. And our scope, as issued by the town, was to take a longer look to, the geography is greater in terms of what we're supposed to be looking at, with a focus on that main intersection, but within the context of a larger study area. And that's shown on this graphic here, where going from west to east, our study area is extended west to Richardson Avenue by the Dunkin' Donuts, includes the Lowell Street intersection, through the main Appleton Street intersection, Forest and Burton, and then even further to Quinn Road and Fessenden Road on the east, heading towards Arlington Center. So it's a much more expanded study area. That one of the first things we did was we took survey data, we did all new traffic counts and multimodal counts and tried to capture everything that we could about what was happening in this area. That's really informed, our design process as we've moved forward. Our process has been this. We've been back to talk to you both formally and informally as consultants and as the town going back to last spring. We presented at several public meetings those existing conditions. We worked with you on goals. We presented some concepts, some approaches to those concepts, things that you might want to see out here, or things, different elements that we could talk about, including in the design. And then we presented a kind of rough version of that back in the fall and October. And then here we are now at that 25% design level, where I think what we're going to show you tonight takes a lot of those decisions, takes a lot of that feedback, and is represented in a much more detailed design that allows you to get your hands dirty about the things you like or don't like within it. And again, this is back to our agenda, a little bit of a funding update and schedule. So one thing is, last year, the town of Arlington applied for a MASSWORKS grant for planning and design work. And we found out, I think the night of our last meeting in October, that the town was awarded over $300,000. I was awarded over $300,000, $307,000, in fact, from MASSWORKS, which is a program under Mass DOT, the state agency, to continue the design of this safety and accessibility project. One thing that's really important here is that, in our experience collectively as consultants and as the town of Arlington and the staff at the town of Arlington, is that if MASSWORKS has awarded you money for planning and design, you are much more likely to receive money through the same program for funding of the actual construction, which means that the plans that we're showing, the things that we want to do, the improvements that want to be made can happen much sooner. And what we're working towards right now is actually applying again in this round, and that funding application is due June 2nd of this year for the full cost of construction of this plan. And that really creates some urgency for finalizing the concept and taking it to a level at which we can really firm up what those cost estimates are, and to do that over the next couple of months. So again, I think we have a very good chance of receiving funding. We're talking, in the range of $3 to $5 million, for the implementation of this project, which we can get from that MASSWORKS program. What you see again on the left are some of those steps that still need to be taken in order to do this. And all of those things happen, as a result of your feedback on the plans that we're showing you here tonight. So just continuing on with the agenda, let's talk a little bit about what we'd heard at previous meetings. You see us here back at Town Hall back in October, and some of the things that, when we presented the choices and the trade-offs and the design, that we got really strong feedback on from people. One is absolutely support for traffic lights with left turn lanes, and we're talking both at Appleton and at Forest. That's very important, that you're allowed to make those moves, that those moves are encouraged and protected in a signal. Really strong community desire for protected bicycle lanes, not just for bicyclists, but to reduce conflicts between bicyclists and drivers. So as much as we can, again, trying to put all users in their appropriate places, and everybody's got a place to be, which includes new crosswalks. So demand for significantly more crossings and safer crossings across Mass Ave and even across the side streets, kind of running parallel to Mass Ave. And parking, also a critical need, and trying to retain that, especially in the locations where it's most used, especially in the locations where there are businesses and such. And then some questions that people had, things they wanted more information on, how the signals might work, really detailed information about where those crossings and how the bicycles may work at each individual intersection, parking, landscaping, a whole bunch of other things that I think folks wanted more detail on. Subsequent to that meeting, we also presented to over 900 students at the Appleton Middle School at, I think, 2 or 3 different assemblies, so that we could get to all of the kids there. And you see, we did a little exercise about what they would want to see and how they experienced Mass Ave and Appleton. You see that at the bottom, certainly demand for more crossings, for more space just to walk, as well as safer environment and bicycle facilities. Many of them actually do bicycle or walk to school in this area. And it's very important to understand, I should have said this earlier, the whole corridor operates differently at different times of day, right? It's a different place in the morning, in the middle of the day, on a Saturday morning, at peak hour, at 5 or 6 o'clock at night when folks are trying to get home. And all of those different environments need to be accommodated in the design. The counts we've taken, the analysis we've done have looked at all of those different periods. We've also, on an ongoing basis, as a team, been talking, the town's carried a lot of the water on this, and talking to their own public safety departments, to area businesses, to abutters on an ongoing basis, trying to not just do the public meetings, not just do our online outreach, not just do our sort of, normal things, but maybe to make some special outreach as well, and trying to continue that as we move through the design. One thing that's very important to understand is all of the things that folks asked for: left turn lanes, traffic signals, parking, protected bicycle facilities, requires some level of trade-off, right? All of those things don't necessarily fit within the existing right-of-way. It's one thing we presented back at the October meeting to, I think, really high level of support, is the idea of, on the block between Appleton and Forest, repurposing part of the sidewalk on the north side of the street. It's wide enough that we can reclaim part of that and still retain more than adequate pedestrian space. And that allows us to keep most of the things, or accommodate most of the things that folks wanted. We keep those left turn lanes, retain parking on the north side of the street, as well as creating the separated bicycle facility. I'm trying to be very conscious of street trees, not just the ones that exist, but where we can plant new ones as part of this effort. And again, everything comes back to these goals, which I think we've presented and talked through at several previous meetings. We finalized at the October meeting. So those high level goals about what we're trying to achieve here, and the bullets underneath it are, let's call them metrics. So protect all roadway users, integrate corridor with local amenities are the goals. And the metrics are sort of, we shall know that we have achieved the goals by how well we have achieved the things on the metrics, right? So we asked you at the public meeting, and I think we're asking you online for some time to come, at least the next 2 weeks, to comment on how well you think the design accomplishes the goals here. How well have we achieved the things that we have set out to achieve through this design, and to be as specific as possible on this. I'm spending a long time on this slide because I'm encouraging you to pause and read this. You can also hit the pause, obviously, on your computer as you're rewatching this, or go back and not listen to me and just look at them. But definitely spend some time on these, because this process has spent a lot of time trying to establish them. So with that, we'll get right into the concept, which I will not spend a lot of time talking about here, because I think we're really encouraging you to download it, to pause on the individual slides, to look at it in detail from the places that you're particularly concerned with. And again, we're going from west to east, or left to right, here on Mass Ave. And you see here we're beginning at Richardson Street. There's Dunkin' Donuts here, and you can see where Lowell Street comes in. Little icons that are color coded here are actually reflective of the goal. So we're trying to demonstrate where we have, specifically, I think we've achieved some of those goals in the design, right? This is what those goals mean in practical reality in terms of the design. So you can see at the foot of the rocks, we're incorporating with that process, make that more of a place, connected with design, actually widening out some of the sidewalk and the area there. Lowell Street, as it comes in, if you can imagine today, it comes in at a wide open angle, sort of teeing that off here. There's examples of this in many other communities, including Arlington, where folks have kind of redone some of these old New England intersections and make it reduce the amount of asphalt and make it a much safer place, much cleaner for how those operations work. You can see the sidewalk level bicycle facilities throughout here, and where we've retained parking, in this case, on the south side of the street in front of the Dunkin' Donuts and the apartment building there, as well as some of the additional crossings. We're going to keep going to the east. You see Clark Street is the kind of western edge of this section. You see Appleton Street kind of coming in at the angle on the south side here. and a traffic signal proposed at this location. Spend some time on this graphic. Crossings on both sides of Appleton Street. The sidewalk level bicycle facilities. You still see a generous sidewalk on the north side of the street here in front of those businesses. The design also here is showing the closure to general traffic of Appleton Place. As part of the design, that would still be open and protected for emergency vehicle access. But in this design, that signal, and you can see the left turn lane heading westbound on Mass Ave would be to Appleton Street, but not to Appleton Place, which would be closed to general traffic. You see the bicycle facilities continuing through here, the additional crosswalks as we go, and just how well all this is treated and some of the opportunities to add landscaping and placemaking as well. That design continues over to Forest Street, which would also be signalized, and not just Forest Street, but Burton Street. And I'll come back to this on a couple of subsequent slides where we talk about the ability to access from Burton Street. You see the left turn lane on Forest there. Some bump outs at this intersection, as well as the protection for bicyclists and some of those bicycle crossings. Here, Forest Street's the connection over to the Minuteman Bikeway for pedestrians, for bicyclists, for everybody else. And again, you see the beginnings of where the sidewalk repurposing is, and that you still have a really substantive sidewalk on the north side of the street. We're also preserving, again, the parking on the north side of the street in front of the businesses there. That's the most active use. It's the most active parking that occurs in this area. And then just the last slide here, Forest Street now on the left of your screen, going east to Quinn Road. And where we transition back to the rest of Mass Ave. This is the extent of our study area. You see that design continues. But what, again, this really does is it starts to announce, you see at Quinn Road, that you're starting to feel like you're in a different place. You will see that and you will feel that coming westbound from much further on Mass Ave on that straight segment. You'll see Quinn Road. In fact, you'll see the bump outs all the way at Forest. Starting to tell you as a driver, you'll see the signal that this is a place that is different, right? That you're going to have to slow down. There's more things you're going to have to pay attention to. The road's going to narrow because of all the things that we're adding to it. And that alone is going to start to change the feel and the character of this entire stretch. The signal operations, obviously we're working on this in a much more detailed fashion. What we really want to show is that both of these signals, that box on the right-hand side is that pedestrian phase where, as a pedestrian, when you cross, you'll be fully protected. All the vehicle movements, all the bicycle movements really will have a red, so that as a pedestrian, you can cross safely, north, south, east, and west at each intersection. This sequence is very similar at both. Obviously, the signals will be tied together. And one of the things we'll be doing, going from this level of design to the next level, is doing things like placing all the poles and all the indicators and all the signal heads and all of those things, within the context of the final design. Obviously, one of the real advantages of what we're doing here by reducing the amount of asphalt is we're creating places. We're creating opportunities and places for people to be, for landscaping, for trees, for shade, for resilience, for artwork, for all of those things. There's much more opportunity for that in this design than there is in the corridor as it exists today. So this is something we're very excited about. There's some examples of what that might look like here on the right. I think we've shown many more at previous meetings and gotten some feedback on the kinds of treatments that you can get. We're preserving, as I've mentioned several times, parking, where it's most used, where it's most critical, which is on the north side for most of the corridor, but then on the south side as we get further west towards Richardson. As I mentioned earlier, this kind of goes hand in hand with the proposed closure of Appleton Place, but also the ability to access this entire area behind Mass Ave from Burton Street, both coming in and going out. I think with the understanding that that would be signalized, right? So for church access, as well as for the residential area. One thing we heard a lot of throughout the course of this process is that folks come out Burton Street, but they're really challenged because the sight lines aren't great. It's hard to see to the right and to the left if cars are coming. You kind of inch out, and it doesn't feel very safe. You'll be able to come out on a green through the signal there, and I think that'll make all the difference for folks coming out of that area. It'll make it a more attractive way to come out. We're also, you saw some of the crosswalks through the design, increasing the number of crossings along this stretch of Mass Ave, really reknitting the community, fostering that connectivity throughout. And then, as we said, maintaining emergency access on the closed Appleton Place. This is what that could look like. These are just some examples with bollards from some other places in the region. So essentially, that's the concept. Again, I think that the next steps here are really for us to keep hearing from you. We got a ton of feedback at the meeting. We're in the process of writing that up. That is not all the feedback we hope to receive. You said this is going to be online for a couple of weeks. Encourage you to go back and listen to me go through this presentation again, and to mark up some of these comment sheets that I'll show you in a moment. But really, we want your feedback so that we can finalize this design and go through all the next elements so that we can apply, hopefully successfully, for that MASSWORKS grant so that the town can get the funding to actually move forward on this project and make it a reality. So, that's about where we are on the right-hand side of this screen. And then, as I was mentioning earlier, this tell us what you think form. So even if you can't get your brother or your sister or your husband or your wife or your mom or your daughter to listen to this presentation, hopefully you can get them to look at the design and fill out this form. I like this, didn't like this. I really think this protects all roadway users. We don't think this encourages resiliency in this place. That's the kind of feedback that we really want to get in the next 2 weeks. I think we're taking all of that in. And the town is very willing to continue to listen to folks, to meet individually as needed in order for us to be able to move this forward. So thank you very much for listening. You can watch this again. And, really where we are is trying to get this wrapped up so we can hit that MASSWORKS application, later this spring. Thank you all.